Greetings and welcome to Chant a Day. Oh my goodness, giving thanks every day. As we begin our psalm today, I'm sending this psalm out to my sisters, all my sisters, my brothers, anyone who is in a relationship that they're feeling trapped, or that they're feeling that there's a financial obligation or financial benefit that they have to stay within a relationship. So it's good that people can be honest and they can, tell you they met someone, or, they want to move on, or you should move on. And it brings closure, it brings a sense of I'm going to be allowed to serve my purpose without any obstacles, without myself as an obstacle or someone else. I'm going to be able to serve my purpose. So we will find our purpose when we are able to do that. We're able to not be dependent on somebody else. I'll give an example. I went to the Bay yesterday. You can look on my channel, subscribe to this channel, like this channel, and you'll see that I'm thankful I could pick myself up, get into my Jeep. It's give thanks is working, but not fully. It's just a long story. Anyway, and I could go to the Bay. I don't have to wait for someone to take me. I don't have to, pay someone. I can just go. So that is the ultimate sense of being free. You're not enslaved or captured by a job, by a person, by someone, or by something or some organization that is holding you captive, and you are dependent on them for your survival so that you can pay your bills or do whatever you need to do. We are in a time where it's like crunch time. Things are getting more expensive, and our salaries are not matching that expense. It's not. So in order to, research has shown that in order to live in our, capitalistic and colonialistic societies, we have to be making at least $90,000 to $100,000 a year. And the big businesses can afford that. It's not that they can't. They can pay 20 people $100,000, right? That's nothing. So in the psalm today, it is looking at ourselves and what our shortcomings are or have been that has resulted in where we are today. And where we are today, we have to look at what it is, how it is, why, where, when. All of the questions has to be addressed. So in the psalm today, be gracious to I and I. So it says me. I take out the pronouns. It's not about me. It's about all of I and I. We are not just isolated beings. Okay, we isolate ourselves, but we're not isolated beings. We have other people around that we can communicate with, we can fellowship with, we can commune with, we can have a communication with. So we're not isolated, and we should not isolate ourselves. But when I look at the scriptures, I have to translate the scriptures into words of liberation. And these words of liberation must happen in order to fully express and fully stand firm in the word of the scriptures, because the scriptures were used to enslave. Okay, they were part of the capitalistic and colonialistic marriage that birthed white supremacy, and in that birth of white supremacy, all these different platforms were created to perpetuate that ideology. So in that space, as Black people, it is our duty to translate this. Pastors, especially Black pastors, need to translate this. And in the translation, we have to take out black and dark as a negative. Take it out. Blackness and darkness and colorism is that genesis of the caste system. Okay, is the beginning of the caste system that is functioning today as oppression of non-white groups. Oppression. Okay, we have dark skin colored people in India, and their hair is jet black straight, but they're black, they're dark skinned, and they're not accepted. They're called Aborigines in Australia because they're dark black skinned and they have this type of crown. So when we look at this ideology of one is better than the next, it's crouched in the language. As Martin Luther King spoke, it's crouched in the language. It's hidden in there. Even in the word today, it's coming, it's supported with 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6, that speaks, let light shine out of darkness. Wait a minute. They called Africa the dark continent. Remember that. And people are dark skinned. So why are you going to let light shine out of dark? Let light shine out of oppression. Let light shine out of depression and anxiety and mental illness. Let light shine out of those despairing situations. That's what it needs to be translated as, so you can get the meaning of what's going on. Let light shine out of these oppressive places, because light is what we all are. We are light, and our light is being dimmed by the world that we serve. Stop serving the world and letting your light dim. Don't serve this world. The world is fading away. You need to serve what it is, that light that is inside of you, that is shining for the world, to light the world up, because the world is in an oppressive state. It's in a rich getting richer, poor getting poorer state, where the rich are getting rich off of the poor, and the poor are fighting each other to be like the rich. So we have to translate now. The psalm today and the word today is very together, and it wasn't meant to be like that, but it always ends up happening because of that divine order. The divine order of things places us in the right place at the right time with the right words, so that we may not have to worry, as Moses was afraid to speak to Pharaoh because Moses had a stutter, and he was like, why you pick me to do this? The Most High is going to pick the one that thinks they can't do it because they can. And that searching for that inside of them is that journey that they're going to go on to achieve what they think they can't achieve. You can do it. You can do it. So centennial is the word today. And righteousness in I is I and I light, and I and I firm standing in that righteousness. So when we look at God, Lord, and Jesus, Jehovah Jireh, Buddha, Selassie the first, all of the names that different branches of the same tree call on, because these different branches are part of that same tree, that same trunk, that same foundation, that same root. And the root of it is righteousness, goodness, mercy, love, compassion, all of that, kindness, teaching that to children. I love a room full of children where I can look at how their righteousness is expressed. I mean, it's beautiful to see. They express it in their art, in their writing, in their behavior with other children. They may not know how to express the kindness. They may want something that the other child has, and they may not know how to take turns or be patient and wait. So it's important that we embrace that righteousness, mercy, love, and kindness, and know that the root of all of the religiosity comes and boils up into that oneness, that one love of humanity. When you see another human, you're like, oh, that's a creation of the Creator. Greetings, blessed. And then if they come at you in a negative way, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this person is coming to hurt me, they're coming to destroy, they're coming to, crucify. Let me stand on my righteousness. That is what's going to save me. So, in the word today, from dailyword.com, it's coming from the Daily Word magazine. And they're celebrating 100 years, 1924 to 2024, 100 years. So it's been a century that their devotional little books have been out there. And in, translating that into words of liberation is what I do. They don't pay me to do that. I'm not selling their books or selling anything about them. I just basically like to look at the word for the day, and that word is light, the light shining out of darkness. Well, not darkness, but the light shining out of misery, despair and enslavement. That is what the darkness is. And let's speak about it the way it is and use the word darkness to represent something positive. So I created the Black Mermaid, and the Black Mermaid is dark, right? Her skin is obsidian black, dark, chocolate drop, not even chocolate, but like a black obsidian. And even though her color is that way, she has a light, and that light shines. And when she's swimming in the ocean, you can see her because that's that light. You can see that light moving. So the Black Mermaid, it's copywritten, and it's my story of the origin of the Black Mermaid and how she began, why she began, with what she began, and with where she is today. So in that story, it's similar to that light, right? Shining out of depression, shining out of dark, of a depressive place. Okay? You see how hard it is for me we're programmed to use the word dark and darkness and blackness in a negative way. And as Black people, we also do that same thing, use it in that way. Oh, blackmailing, oh, blackout, everything black is this negative. We have to stop that. We have to empower ourselves, because that's how we dim our light. We don't want to dim our light. We want our light to shine out of the depression of the of bills and all of the worldly troubles that we find ourselves in, because we fall into traps of consumerism. Yeah, we fall into traps of consumerism. We consume more than we produce. We're consuming every holiday that rolls around, we're consuming it. And we spend money out into the capitalistic and colonialistic regime. We give them back our money instead of boycotting, just like they did it down in the South in the civil rights, when they boycotted the buses and they walked. They walked. We need to take that same initiative, or we're going to be consumed by our own consumerism. So we have holidays coming up in the US all the time. When my children were going to public school, after I homeschooled them and I put them in public school, it was an experiment really to see what's happening in how they would transition from and how they would look at the world and being thrown into the world. So when I spoke to the teacher, I said they do not celebrate any US holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, any of these holidays, they do not celebrate. So when you do something in the classroom around that, you put them to the side, and they're going to know why they don't celebrate it. And I give them the historical evidence that is, I didn't write it. This is what has happened in the story of the country that we live in, called the USA. Okay? So I give them that information, and that information is going to empower them to look at themselves and not dim their light with the consumerism of this, world. So it is very important that when we look at the scriptures, because the Bible right now is getting ready to be on the chopping block, and people are going to chop it down. There is going to be, it's going to get serious, because legislation has created divisive and oppressive situations for certain people. Okay? The state of Maryland, I was at the Bay yesterday and read that the state of Maryland was the first colony to institutionalize slavery in America, and then in 1641 Massachusetts. So 1640, now remember 1619 was when the first Africans documented, because we don't know, they must have stolen them before that. Okay. The first Africans documented to come to be transported to America, to Virginia, in 1619 as indentured labor or servants. They were free labor, and instead of calling a spade, they're gonna speak indentured labor or servant. This is from this book. So when I looked at that yesterday, because I'm in the state of Maryland, in 1640, Maryland became the first colony to institutionalize slavery in America. So when I look at that, I look at the fact that righteousness, call it what you want, but I'm calling it goodness and mercy and compassion, sent Frederick Douglass, sent Harriet Tubman, sent these folks to sacrifice themselves, for righteousness, for what is right, what they know was right. And what was right was to not enslave folks, not to dominate folks, not to put folks down and take their labor. And now you're taking their labor and giving them money that doesn't equate to where you have them living, where you set them up to live. And what they're making in their money is not equal. The math ain't mathing. You hire someone, big corporations, like, all these big corporations, hiring people at pennies to the dollar. That to me is slavery. That's free labor. You're getting free labor. You may be paying a little bit of money and benefits and all that, but you're still getting free labor because it doesn't equate to what is being consumed, what people are consuming. The prices for eggs and bread and milk and cheese, all that's going to go skyrocket. I'm glad I don't eat that stuff anymore. But what about people that do eat that stuff? What about people that do eat those things? And then you got to pay insurance on top of that to go to the doctor. So that's why the math is not mathing. It's oppressive. And people are going to work every day. They go to their jobs, giving their time now and their energy, and receiving pennies on the dollar, living from paycheck to paycheck every 14 days out of the month. You got to take that and stretch it like a rubber band so it don't bounce back and hit you in your face. And then you have nothing left to go out and enjoy yourself because you're working just to pay the slave master. Yeah, you're working just to pay the slave master, basically. My light went out. So, oh goodness, my stuff is... So, we haven't even gotten into the psalm yet, and look how far we are, because this is all related. It's all related. Some people might say, oh, you're getting off topic, but it is all related to what we're looking at. Yep. Okay, wait. Okay, here we go. I gotta get a new one of these because it's got a short in it. So, looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6, let light shine out of darkness, is translated from darkness to oppressive, to downpressing, to despair and depression. That is what I'm going to translate that to be. So let's start with the Psalm 41. And it's titled, O righteousness, be gracious to I and I. So, Psalm 41, and we're looking at 13 verses. So, here we go. Bless that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart is acceptable in the sight of the Most High. And we're starting at the 6 o'clock hour. What? 6 a.m. Wow. Very powerful that I'm starting this at exactly 6 a.m. Selah and Selah again, that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart is acceptable in the sight of the Most High. I'm grateful and I'm thankful to be able to reach out in the cyber world on YouTube with this psalm. Verse 1, blessed is the one who thinks about the poor. That's verse 1, exclamation mark. Blessed is the one who thinks about the poor. In the day of trouble, right? Righteousness delivers the poor. So we see the psalm is talking about, as we begin, talking about the poor. And as I started, I'm talking about the oppressiveness, the depression, the enslavement, the rich getting richer, and then the off of the poor, and the poor is fighting each other. They're into this consumerism. Who has the biggest Christmas tree? Who has the biggest car? Who has the big? And they're in competition with each other, while the rich is making money off of them. So the psalm is talking about the exact same thing. Blessed is the one that thinks about the poor, because the powers and principalities out here are not thinking about the poor, because when they think about the poor, we wouldn't have homelessness. We would have specialists designed to work with the homeless population. We would have buildings being built for the homeless population. We would not be having prisons built, but we would have shelters built, right? We would have places that are housing secure for people who are trying to change their life around for positivity, but they're homeless. They're being evicted. They can't afford the rent. The rent is skyrocketing high, but their paycheck isn't matching, is not equating to that. How do we support that? Are policymakers thinking about the poor and these folks? Are they thinking about that? Those aging families? So this psalm is not just going out to my brothers and sisters who are in relationships that are unhappy or struggling financially. It is to everyone out there who is going through struggles. So Psalm 41 in verse 1, in the day of trouble, righteousness delivers the poor. Righteousness protects the poor and keeps the poor alive. Righteousness is, the poor is called blessed in the land. Righteousness does not give the poor up to the will of the enemies. And the will of the enemies on the poor is that oppression. That's the enemy. Okay? And the enemy, people talk about, we are our worst enemy. Yes, we are. Because we oppress ourselves by buying into the consumerism of the world. We do that. We buy into the consumerism of the world and we oppress ourselves. That's what happens. So it's important that we realize getting it right is going to be the saving grace, right? Being prepared, getting things right, doing the right thing, being right to each other, being a team player with each other is going to deliver that ones out of trouble. But when you are not being a team player and you're going off doing your thing and then you come and return to the team with trouble, what does that tell you? It tells that you are not trusting in your own light. Your own light that is in there shining out of this depressive and oppressive state. We oppress ourselves. We oppress ourselves by consuming too much. We consume too much. And in that consumerism, and you notice it starts with a con, because that's what it is. It's an illusionary thing. When we could use our funds to build a business that is going to generate and add to what we already have, not take away from what we have. When you consume, when you go consuming on all these holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, blah, blah, and the list goes on. They're going to create more and more. You end up the one with nothing, because these holidays are not giving you a stimulus check where you can go and say, you know what, I'm going to go and do a business plan and start a business online. You can come to my site and order things. I mean, is that happening? No, it's not. It's not. So when you are consuming and buying into these different holidays, they're not giving you anything in return. What? That satisfaction that you have a Christmas tree and it looks pretty and it's lights. Remember, all that blinks and blings isn't gold. And we got to remember that. We got to stay away from this bling, and we show our children that. We show them these Christmas trees and lights and bling bling, and that's what they go after. And they go after that and end up getting something totally different, because what's on the outside may not be what's on the inside. So it's righteousness that is going to sustain the poor on the poor's sickbed, and in the poor's illness will be restored to full health. So in verse 4, as for I and I, now this is what I and I must do, okay? I and I speak, righteousness be gracious to I and I. Heal I and I, for I and I have sinned against righteousness. Okay, I have done wrong. I have consumed too much. I have whatever. So in verse 5, the enemies speak of I and I in malice. And this is what the enemy speaks. When will she die and her name perish? This is what the enemy is talking about. This is what they spoke about with Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. When will they die and their name perish and be no more? Bob Marley, but you see it backfired. When they exterminate our people, they cannot exterminate their message. Their message cannot be extinguished. So in verse 6, this is what the enemy does. Empty words. And inequity is gathered up in their hearts. So the enemy's got empty words. Okay? Empty words, and telling these words abroad. And all that does not love righteousness whispers together about righteousness. Oh, she thinks she's too good. She's she thinks she's above everyone else. She thinks she's all Miss Goody Two Shoes, and this is what's whispered about righteousness. And the imagination that people have is the worst. They're imagining the worst for you. Okay? So, in verse 5, 6, and 7, we're talking about these obstacles of these enemies. And that enemy is yourself. You are your worst enemy. Because then you tell yourself worse things, imagining the worst about yourself. I'm not good enough. Oh my goodness, I can't do this. I am that. What am I doing? Oh my God, you're questioning and doubting yourself. So you're imagining the worst of yourself. Don't do that. When we talk about the enemy is within our own self. That's why you have a good on one shoulder and a bad on the other shoulder. When I embrace somebody, I embrace one side and the other side too. I'm about to wipe out the wrongness. So I gotta hug you twice on both sides. Boom, boom. Why you think, some folks kiss people and they kiss them on both sides? Okay? We're trying to reach a harmonious state. We're trying to reach a state of balance, especially for those who represent the scales. They got to balance. So the enemy is yourself, okay? And this is why we have war, because the enemies are people are fighting each other instead of looking at themselves and trying to fix themselves before they go want to tell somebody, you need to do this and that. So this psalm is on point, y'all. On point. So verse 8. This is what the enemy is talking about. A deadly thing is poured out on him. On the poor. And the poor will not rise again from where the poor is. They're going to stay poor. They're going to stay down there. Right? And this is what people think about themselves. Oh, I can't start my own business. I'm just going to work for someone else the rest of my life. Like, you can do it. You can rise up and do it. So, in verse 9, even your close friend in whom you trusted, who you ate with, lifted up themselves against you. Okay? This has happened. Many people out there, it's happened maybe to you, to someone you know, where a close friend that you trusted, they betrayed you. Okay? So, in verse 10, the Most High, the righteousness is what's gracious. That's going to be gracious to you. Doing right by yourself. Okay? Having self-worth. Valuing yourself. Having the opportunity to give yourself love. To love yourself. All right? That's not being selfish. Loving yourself is being self-care. Caring about yourself. So, part of that loving yourself is telling yourself that you're beautiful. Telling yourself that you're worthy to be on this planet. Telling yourself that you are good. You're righteous. You have not a spirit, but an irit. And that irit stands for I am righteous. I am good. I am love. I am mercy. I am compassion. I am worthy. You are worthy. So, in verse 10, righteousness is the only saving grace that is going to raise I and I up and is going to repay the enemies, is going to right the wrongs. And that is not for you to judge anyone, because righteousness is a mist. It's a mist. It's an omnipresent mist that's going to take care of itself. You are not going to get on the bandwagon going and putting people to the stake and burning them alive. That is not what righteousness is. That's wrongness. Righteousness is communication, is embracing the liberation of that individual, right? If that individual is not harming themselves, you, the society, the community, they're free to be. But some people need extra support, and that's what the community as a village is supposed to do. Support. There's a man in the town drumming. He looks like he's homeless. Somebody took a picture of him and said, that looks like my family member. I said, that's all everybody family member. That's everybody's brother. We are our brother's keeper. When somebody is on the side of the road homeless, I look at them and I say, blessed greetings, King. Blessed greetings, Queen. I raise them up. I don't look down on them because they are homeless. This has a short. I gotta get a new one. I gotta get a new one. So we cannot look down on folks. Verse 11. Through the knowledge of righteousness, I know that righteousness delights in I righteousness. I enemy will not shout in triumph over I. Only righteousness has upheld I because of I integrity, I honesty, I truth, I right, and set I in the presence of righteousness for all time to come. I don't want to be in the presence of liars, cheaters, stealers, murderers. I don't want to be in the presence of that. I know that exists. But I also know that there is heaven on earth. Just as there is hell on earth, there is heaven on earth. Join me when I go to the bay, and you will see a little tiny piece of heaven on earth when I go to the bay today. I'm about to leave in a few minutes. So in verse 13, the end of this psalm, blessed be righteousness. Righteousness is belonging to all of I, not just the God of Israel, the God of this one, the God of all these gods. It's righteousness for all of I. Blessed be righteousness, the righteousness of all of I. From such time ago to such time ago. Selah and Selah again. So I don't use the word everlasting to everlasting because we're not going to be last. God, righteousness is first. There is no last with that. So I look at it as enduring. It's an enduring and a steadfast love and righteousness. And it's not just for men. It's also for women. So amen. We're looking at the patriarch. We're looking at that capitalistic, colonialistic that married and had white supremacy that represents the white male dominant society, patriarchal, where the woman is marginalized and left out. So I use the word Selah, Selah. So Radochna, do good. Sota, Mesgana, give thanks. These are ancient words that the ancients spoke that we need to seek to speak. So, Selah and Selah again. Here ends the psalm for today. And the verse today, oops, the verse today is coming from, let's get the verse of the day, Romans chapter 12, verse 3. For through the grace, we talked about the psalm today. The psalm is about the graciousness that is of the righteousness that is given to I and I, that is within I and I, that is that light that's within I and I. But we also have an enemy, and that enemy is within I and I too, that we have to break away from. And we have to realize that we are blessed. And the verse today from Romans chapter 12, verse 3 expresses that. For through the grace given I speak to everyone. Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment. In accordance with the faith righteousness has distributed to each of you. So, when you're thinking of yourself more highly, like I mentioned, you're looking at the homeless person, you're looking down at them because they're on the ground and you're standing upright, and you're looking down at them. Don't look down at them. Rather, look at yourself with sober judgment. Like, you know what? I'm not going to judge this person because they don't have a home. I have a home to go to and a bed to sleep in, but they don't. I'm going to have faith that righteousness has also been distributed to them too. And they know they have that distribution of that righteousness. Okay? So in Romans chapter 12, verse 3, it's all in together with the Psalm 41, be gracious to I and I righteousness. And then it's all in tandem with 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 6, 2 Corinthians. Let light shine out of this oppressive state of mind, mental slavery, right? Have a sober judgment. Be aware of how you are looking and judging other people. Make sure it is with a full, sensibility that you have looked at yourself first. That's what sober judgment is. It's okay, I'm going to look at myself before I talk about you. Okay? I'm not just going to pipe off on you, but I'm going to look at myself. I have shortcomings. I wasn't a good parent. I fell short too. I wasn't a good son. I didn't listen. I'm not going to blame my parents. I'm going to look at myself. Parents don't blame the children. Children don't blame the parents. Come on. Let's look at ourselves soberly and not always point the finger and blaming another person for something wrong. We have a part to play in that. You're not going to be in a relationship criticizing the other person and you're not looking at yourself and where you fell short. So that's what I have been looking at myself. Where did I fall short? I fell short. I wasn't it was just I grew apart because I felt I wasn't part of anything anymore. I wasn't being put first. I wasn't being included in anything. I just, when things are happening in a relationship, if two people are in a relationship and they are sharing a home together, they're also sharing finances, and whatever finances are coming out of the home, each person is aware of it. And that wasn't happening in my relationship, and it pushed me away, where I felt I wasn't included in what you're doing. You're just going off and doing things financially, making decisions without me. And some people see that as controlling. They don't see it as being a team, but I see it as being a team. Being a team, when you work as a team, you make the dream happen, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. But when you're in a team and you're doing things by yourself, it's not, the dream isn't going to work. You're pulling off of the other person. You're bringing them down while you're bringing yourself down. So you're not being a team. And moving forward in my relationships, I want a team player. We're going to be a team. I'm not controlling your finances, but you're not going to take from me and do what you want. And then when you don't have anything, you come to me and now we're a team. Like, it doesn't work that way. A team is when you come together and you put the game plan and you stick with that game plan. And anybody else outside the team, they may be your family, your friends. You want them on your team. You want them part of that, but you're in a relationship. You've made a commitment to someone. You're not sleeping with your family members. You're sleeping with this person. That is who you have to account to and advocate for. And when I don't feel that, I pull away and I'm like, okay, then you be a team over there and I'll be a team over here. It's not, the math ain't math and it's not jiving. So we have to come together. We have to come together. And in order for us to come together, we have to know how graciousness works and how righteousness works, compassion and mercy, and looking at yourself first in that space of what graciousness is and what righteousness is and where you fit into that and how you can express that in your work, in the passions that you have. What is your purpose? If you like picking up garbage or you like fixing cars, that's your passion, that's your gift, you need to feed it. You need to water your gift. You need to, sow in that soil so that you can harvest something beautiful and bountiful and blessed. That's all it's about. We make our lives so complicated by consuming too much instead of producing more. We need to be producers. That's why the healing oil, this oil, I'm producing it, okay? And there's seeds in there. You can plant it and produce your own. I'm not going to stop you from producing anything, but the world does, okay? When you get a fruit, sometimes there's no seed in there. So look at that and what's happening there. So thank you for joining Chant. If you missed the beginning, go and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you at the Bay. Have a blessed day, everybody. See you at the Bay. See you at the Bay. Much love, everyone. Much love. Love you.